Morning. Today, I want to talk about how damaging to your client acquisition focus having, to your client acquisition process having no focus is, because it is incredibly damaging. I had a wonderful conversation with a lovely coach yesterday. And if you're watching this, you might recognize the conversation. I'm not going to say their name. We were talking about the fear behind choosing a focus for our marketing. And she said, it's a very real fear. I feel like if I choose a focus, I am missing out potentially on all of these other opportunities that I might have that might appear in my world, and that I am effectively closing doors that should remain open. And that by choosing a focus, I will put off more people than I will attract. I understand that that's how it feels. But a feeling is not a fact. And even though we believe we know how marketing works, how client acquisition and marketing works, the vast majority of us do not. Now, it's actually a real problem that we don't know how client acquisition works, but that we think we do, and we're wrong. And this is something that I talk about fairly regularly. The fact that nobody knows what our kind of coaching is, but they think they do and they're wrong, and what a massive barrier that is for us. So when we use the word coach, the people that we're talking to already have a meaning for that word in their head, which involves a transfer of knowledge that is not what we mean by it. And the barrier that creates for them is that when they have the kind of problem that our sort of coaching could help them overcome, they don't think of us because they don't know what we do. But they think they know and they're wrong. So if we look at any other kind of professional service provider, accountant, architect, psychotherapist, psychiatrist even, all of those people, we know what they do. And that means we know when we need the services of one. And with coaching, that's not the case. Now, let me transfer that onto this idea that coaches believe they know what marketing is. Because it's obvious, isn't it, that we must cast our nets wide and we must be open to any and all opportunities, and that we can just have really good conversations, and we do not know when those conversations might produce fruit, and being open to everything because we can coach anyone feels like the right thing to do. Feelings are not facts. Marketing, client acquisition, marketing is a professional skill. And I very rarely come across a coach who has that professional skill. And even when I do, the clever ones who have degrees, postgraduate degrees, and entire careers in marketing recognize that they know how to market somebody else's stuff. That the difference between what they learned at kind of school, university, wherever, and what they need for their own coaching business is different. Our education systems produce employees, and employees are not naturally entrepreneurial. And being entrepreneurial is what we need to be. We need to learn how to be entrepreneurial. And part of that is learning professional level marketing skills. So not having a focus means that nobody knows what we do. We already know the word coach is a problem. Nobody knows what we do, but they think they know and they're wrong. So that's one problem. Not having a focus and kind of trying to market to anyone who fill in the blank. So anyone who has a goal they want to reach, anyone who has some limiting beliefs they want to uncover or dig out, anyone who is in transition, anyone who is a leader and has to make strategic decisions, all of that is fluffy noise and waffle in a world that needs to be incredibly specific. We are surrounded by marketing noise on a daily basis. When I wrote my coaching business in a book, I think the second edition was about 2022, 21, 22, something like that. The stats then were that we see between 12 and 1400 ads a day. Ads are a form of marketing. They're like a really easy one because we all know what an ad is. Now, those advertisements, they exist in print media, on the telly, on the radio, on social media, on the sides of buses, on billboards that used to be like a fixed thing, but now they have digiboards, so they can have 7 or 8 or 9 different ads that we see. We are continually bombarded with marketing messages. And as human beings, we have a mechanism for filtering out the things that are of no use to us and selecting the things that are useful to us. And that is called our reticular activating system. And it's a part of your brain that chooses things it actually wants to take notice of. So I tend to think of our reticular activating systems as one large, like really large filing cabinet and one very, very much smaller filing cabinet. The large one contains everything we see, hear, taste, smell, or touch. It's basically our subconscious. And the fact that we do actually have all of that information there, but it's quite hard for us to access because it's just in our subconscious. That's how hypnotherapy works. It allows us to access the subconscious. The very much smaller filing cabinet is called things in which I am actually interested. And the job of our reticular activating system is to move things between those filing cabinets as we move through our lives. And a really good example of your reticular activating system doing its job is when you decide, for example, that you're going to buy a new car, and suddenly you see that make and model of car everywhere. Or you're interested in going to see a film, and suddenly you see ads for that film everywhere. That's because your reticular activating system has taken that information out of in the case of the car, the huge filing folder called traffic, and it's put it into the very much smaller file called cars in which I am interested. And, so if you are a motorbike nut, then you're going to see every motorbike that goes past because you are interested in it. For those of us who are parents, there is a season of life where somebody shouting, "Mom" or "Dad" gives us whiplash. We can turn around so quickly, even when we are holding the hands of our own children. And it's because our reticular activating system is primed to hear mom or dad. And if we're in a busy, crowded, room that everybody's talking, nobody's shouting, it's not ridiculously loud, but it's enough of a hubbub that we can't hear individual conversations. If somebody calls our name from the other side of the room, we'll hear it because it's our name. And our reticular activating system is continually polling for things that are something to do with us. And this is why the idea of trying to market to everyone doesn't work, because nobody's reticular activating system goes, "That's me." It just becomes part of the general noise that we are incredibly good at ignoring. And so in order to be able to prick somebody's reticular activating system, we need to be talking to them specifically. Them in that particular sector, industry, or profession with that particular job title. Now, I know that feels so specific that it's positively horrifying, but it works because there is no such thing as unfocused marketing. If it's not focused, it isn't marketing. It's just noise. And I appreciate, coaches are clever people. they're clever people. And I appreciate that what I'm saying here, which is basically you don't really know what you're doing, can be quite confronting to us because we're clever. We're used to being able to improvise in all kinds of situations and have that improvisation work, whether it's in a professional context or whether it's, a recipe or whether it's gardening or whether it's kind of resolving a situation we've never come across before. We are normally operating within our areas of knowledge and expertise. I can look at a bunch of ingredients and I can make a meal from them. I couldn't fix something technical because that's outside of my area of knowledge and expertise, but I know that. And what's really interesting is that since the advent of the internet, we all think we know how to market. We all think we know how to find clients and that you just need your first one or two and the rest will come by referral. And it's simply not true. It's not true for the vast majority of us. So having a focus for your marketing, knowing exactly who you are marketing to gives you a massive advantage because, first and foremost, when you know who they are, you know where they are. So let's pick a GP, a primary care physician, if you're not in the UK. So a general practitioner. So that's a doctor. So we know that doctors aren't going to be at conferences for teachers, for example. We know that they're not going to be at conferences for lawyers, that they're going to be at their own events. We know what websites they could consider to be reputable. We know which professional bodies they belong to. We know what kind of CPD they do. We know how to find them on a platform like, for example, LinkedIn. When we know who they are, we know where they are. And that is the crux of it, because when we know where they are, we can be there too. But until we know where they are, we don't know how to find them. So when a coach says to me, I like to work with women in transition, I've got two questions: which women and which transition? And they'll say, oh, professional women. And I'll say, which professional women? Professional women is nowhere near specific enough. We know what we mean when we say professional women, but the person whose attention we're trying to garner does not, that they don't, if you put 1,000 women in a room who are what we consider to be professional women, and we say to them, how would you describe yourself? Very, very few, if any of them, would say, I'm a professional woman. They'd say, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher, these professional women don't describe themselves as professional women. And one of the most important things about marketing is it's not about us, it's about them. It's about being able to talk to them in their own language about a problem that they've got that coaching can resolve. And the reason that we need to do that is because they don't know that working with us can resolve this problem, because they don't know what we do. When I say to coaches, who's your main competitor? They'll say to me, other coaches. It's not. Our main competitors tend to be self-help books, podcasts, YouTube channels, because the kinds of things that coaching can help with often have an element of shame attached to them, even when there is no logical reason why that's the case. And people who have a problem that has an element of shame attached to it are not talking about that around the water cooler at work. They are internalizing it, and they are looking for what they think is a solution to something they see as a personal failing. Now, when we know who they are and we know therefore we know where they are and we know what they're struggling with, we can be where they are, demonstrating our knowledge and understanding of the problem that they've got, how it's showing up in their lives, what they've tried to do to overcome it, why the things they've tried haven't worked. And we can also demonstrate our empathy for the situation that they find themselves in and help them to understand that it's not a them problem, that the situation that they found themselves in is a perfectly normal response to the stimulus. And that in itself offers tremendous value to someone. You know, if when we market well, when we market effectively and ethically, we can have a positive impact just through our marketing. And that is a wonderful thing. If you're thinking, I don't agree with that, if you're thinking that's all very well, but it's different for me because I am a special case, can I invite you to join me for my Nail Your Niche challenge? It runs from the 7th to the 10th of September. It's not a down tools and focus on entirely on this for that whole 4 days. It can be very light touch. You can put as much time and energy into it as you would like to. There are 4 concepts: who, where, what, and money. Each day, a different concept training video, no more than 20 minutes long, is dropped into the challenge group. And every day at 5 p.m. UK, my mentors and I deliver a Zoom session where we answer every single question that you might have, not only from the perspective of that day's topic, but also around anything to do with client acquisition, marketing, selling, etc. Anything at all. We don't gatekeep information. You can ask anything. I will share the link to register around this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the challenge. And I'll see you tomorrow.